What could I do? It was June 8th, 1973. I was a reporter and weekend anchor at WFTV, the CBS TV affiliate in Orlando, Florida. It was a Friday, and I was in a marked news vehicle working a story in Kissimmee, a small town south of Orlando. It was near noon when I picked up the mic to talk to the station. In those days, communications were handled through a repeater on the station's broadcasting tower, which was located east of Orlando, about halfway toward Florida's east coast, in a town called Bithlo. I pressed the push to talk and called the station. No reply. I called again. Nothing. I waited a few minutes and tried again. Crickets. I found a phone booth and called in. I was told in exciting tones that our tower had collapsed. That tower was 1,484 feet tall. It was the tallest structure in Florida. It was taller than the Eiffel Tower by more than 500 feet, and it was over 200 feet taller than the Empire State Building. At the time I called in, we didn't know why the tower had collapsed. It could have been a structure fault, an accident, maybe terrorism. You think the worst when you don't know for sure. WFTV Channel 9 wasn't the only station on that tower. It also had the broadcast antenna on it for tower co-owner WDBO Channel 6. 2 radio stations were also on that tower. Each station had a doghouse near the base of the antenna. Doghouse is what we call a small building that held the transmitters that fed each station's antenna on the tower. 2 workers on the tower who were installing an antenna for what we called at the time the educational station were killed when the tower collapsed. The official reason for the collapse was cited as being structural failure, but the story at the time that I heard was the workers had removed the wrong crossmember to put the antenna for the educational station inside the tower. That's how antennas were raised up the tower, by first putting them inside the tower and raising them. The very low chance that structural failure happened on its own at the time workers were on the tower, after that tower stood 24 years, lends credence to the wrong crossmember story. That was on a Friday, just after 12 noon. The next day, I went out in a marked news vehicle to the site of the collapsed tower to shoot film for the evening newscast that I anchored on the weekends. I became aware of a car pacing me in the next lane to my right. By pacing me, I mean that the car was matching my speed. I looked over. The driver was holding a gun in both hands, with the barrel pointed high, and while the girl next to him was holding onto the steering wheel. The man started lowering the barrel of the gun to point at my head. I cannot describe the feeling in my stomach. The feeling was a reaction to the certainty in my mind that I was about to die. There was no way I could react faster than it would have taken for the man to pull the trigger. If I was going to die, then there was nothing I could do. But if this was a twisted prank, if it was to show off to the girl by getting me to show fear, then I could at least not give the guy the satisfaction of getting a reaction from me. So I just calmly ignored him and turned back to looking ahead and driving the news car. Lucky for me, the guy was just showing off for his woman, because he then went away. Now, that's scary, but when you have the time to replay the incident in your head, you might come up with something else you could have done. Well, that's what happened to me. Later, I realized that if I had thought of it quickly enough, I could have body slammed into the other car by violently swerving the news vehicle into it. The other car would have been knocked into the ditch along the road. People could have died. I would have no remorse for the driver because this would have happened while I was convinced he intended to shoot me. But I would have been in pain for the woman. Yeah, she participated, but while probably knowing it was just a bluff, and I don't think she deserved to die. You decide. I've said very little about myself in my podcast so far, so let me drop in here that I'm a Vietnam veteran. I was in the Army and was stationed in a small compound during the year of 1969 that was built around a hill. We had high grass around us, and it was easy for Charlie to hide in that grass and launch rocket attacks at us. Like most every other soldier, I was scared when I first arrived. But what happened to me and what happens to most of us is that you cannot keep that fear going. After maybe 3 weeks, you just can't conjure up any more fear. You just don't care. I survived more than 20 rocket attacks while in the Sharang Valley south of Anke Pass. I tell this story to lead you into another moment of being shot at, but a moment where I had no fear. A reporter had to pull me down behind a car to keep me from being hit by gunfire. The incident became known as the Bering Street Shootout, and it happened in San Antonio in the 70s, where I worked at KENS-TV Channel 5. It's the CBS affiliate in San Antonio. I did every job in the newsroom there. I was a reporter, fill-in anchor, and then for a while I anchored the Noon and 5 newscast. But I would also pick up a camera and shoot for reporters. 2 men were involved with police on Bering Street. It was a standoff. Reporter Bill Shields and I, with a camera, went to the scene. The house where the 2 men were held up was about 4 houses away and was on a turn in the street so that the house faced us. Suddenly, one man stepped out on the porch and began firing at us. Bill dove down behind a car, but not having a capacity for feeling fear, I just stood there rolling video. Bill reached up and grabbed me. He pulled me down hard and quickly. Thank you, Bill. I have more stories like these that I'll talk about in future episodes. Some of these episodes will be on my YouTube channel at themostexclusiveclub.com. You can see my portfolio of work for the national networks and for private clients at donsmith.tv. You can see a film I shot while on that compound in Vietnam at newsvideo.com/Vietnam. Thank you for listening. I'm Don Smith.